Hey everyone, did you know that almost 500 million people, something like the entire population of North America and South America, are living with type 2 diabetes? It's a staggering statistic. But that's what we are diving into today, this global health challenge, and another one closely tied to it, obesity.
It's interesting what's happening because we're seeing a potential game changer in the form of this medication, semaglutide.
We've got medical journals, market analyses, all pointing to something remarkable happening in medicine.
Semaglutide is it's bridging the gap between these two massive health concerns, type 2 diabetes and obesity. The implications are huge.
Okay, so obesity, we all know it's a growing problem.
Yeah.
But paint a picture for us here. What are we talking about?
Well, since the 1970s, the prevalence of obesity has tripled globally. It highlights the urgent need for effective treatments for sure.
And the thing that really struck me was the obesity treatment market is projected to be worth over $50 billion by 2030.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of market value speaks to a demand for something that actually works.
Absolutely. And that's what makes semaglutide's story so interesting. It was initially developed for type 2 diabetes management. You might know it as Ozempic. But during these clinical trials, something kind of unexpected happened.
Okay, this is where I think it gets really interesting. Researchers noticed that patients were losing a significant amount of weight. And we're not just talking shedding a few pounds. This is serious weight loss.
Some participants in these trials achieved up to 15% body weight reduction, which rivals some bariatric surgeries.
So we're talking about a medication that could change how we approach obesity treatment altogether. So how does it work? Is it like an appetite suppressant?
It's a little more complex than that. Semaglutide mimics a naturally occurring hormone called GLP-1, or glucagon-like peptide 1. This hormone regulates both blood sugar and appetite.
So it's like hacking the body's system, using its natural processes to get these results.
Exactly. And this is key to understanding why semaglutide is so effective on two fronts, managing blood sugar and promoting weight loss.
This dual action is what has everyone excited. We'll get into the science in a bit, but first I want to touch on something that's often overshadowed in these discussions, the cardiovascular benefits.
Right, and it often is.
Yeah.
The impact on heart health is significant, especially for people living with type 2 diabetes who are already at a higher risk for heart disease.
And that's where semaglutide really shines. What can you tell us about these cardiovascular benefits?
Well, the SUSTAIN-6 trial showed a significant reduction in major adverse cardiovascular events in high-risk patients taking semaglutide, things like heart attacks and strokes.
Wow. So it's not just about fitting into those old genes, it's about potentially adding years to your life. That's what makes semaglutide so groundbreaking.
And there's even more. Research is ongoing, exploring semaglutide's potential in treating other metabolic conditions, such as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or NASH.
So not just diabetes and obesity, but potentially other areas of medicine as well. That's incredible. I know our listeners are probably wondering, how does this even work? What's going on at the molecular level that allows semaglutide to have such a profound effect? Let's dive into the science behind this groundbreaking medication after this.
So we talked about how semaglutide mimics GLP-1, but what does that look like in the body? How does it actually achieve these results?
Yeah, let's get a closer look at the science. It's fascinating how these molecules can have such a huge impact on our health.
It really is. So imagine this. You eat a meal, your gut releases GLP-1. Then it travels through your bloodstream, binds to specific receptors in different parts of your body. It's like a key finding its lock.
Okay, so I'm visualizing this. What happens when it unlocks?
In the pancreas, this binding triggers the release of insulin, which we know helps regulate blood sugar. But here's where it gets really interesting. GLP-1 also acts on the brain in an area called the hypothalamus, which plays a key role in appetite control.
The hypothalamus. The control center for so many things.
Exactly. By acting on the hypothalamus, semaglutide essentially helps you feel fuller for longer and reduces those food cravings we all experience. That ultimately leads to a decrease in calorie intake and weight loss.
So it's not just about willpower, it's about working with your biology, those hunger and fullness cues.
Exactly. And unlike older weight loss medications that basically just tried to suppress appetite, this works more in sync with your body.
Now, I was reading about another mechanism, gastric emptying. Could you explain that a little bit and how that contributes?
Sure. Gastric emptying is basically how quickly food moves from your stomach to your intestines. Semaglutide slows down this process, so you stay feeling full and satisfied longer after a meal.
So it's a two-pronged approach. It regulates blood sugar, acts on the brain to reduce appetite, but it also physically slows down digestion.
Precisely. It's this multifaceted mechanism that makes semaglutide so effective for both blood sugar control and weight loss. There's another important factor that makes it so successful too. It's design.
What do you mean by design?
Well, semaglutide has been modified to be more resistant to breakdown in the body, giving it a longer half-life compared to other earlier GLP-1 medications.
So it stays in the system longer and the effects are more sustained.
Exactly. That's why it's only administered once a week, which makes it a much more convenient option for people managing chronic conditions like diabetes and obesity.
Let's be honest, convenience and ease of use are so important when it comes to sticking with a treatment plan long term.
Oh, absolutely. Adherence to medication is so crucial for those lasting results.
Now, we've talked a lot about the positives, but obviously, no medication is without its potential downsides. What about side effects?
That's a very important part of any medication discussion. The good news is semaglutide is generally well tolerated. The most common side effects are gastrointestinal, things like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation.
So not pleasant, but manageable.
For the most part, yes. They're usually temporary and tend to decrease as you continue use. Starting with a low dose and gradually increasing can also help.
So starting low and slow is key. Are there any more serious side effects people should know about?
There are a few rare but potential side effects to be aware of. One is an increased risk of complications from diabetic retinopathy, especially in patients who already have some degree of retinopathy.
For our listeners who may not be familiar, could you explain retinopathy and why it's a concern for people with diabetes?
Of course. Diabetic retinopathy is a complication of diabetes that affects the eyes. High blood sugar can actually damage blood vessels in the retina, the back part of the eye that senses light, and lead to vision problems and even blindness.
That's why regular eye exams are so important for people with diabetes.
Absolutely. Early detection and management are key. Now, there have also been reports of acute pancreatitis in some individuals taking semaglutide.
Okay, so something to watch closely. Should people with a history of pancreatitis be cautious about taking this?
It's always best to have that conversation with your doctor, discuss your full medical history, and determine if it's right for you. And lastly, although rare, there is a slight risk of hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, particularly when semaglutide is used with other glucose-lowering medications.
So close monitoring, communication with your doctor is key, as with any medication. But it sounds like the benefits, the long-term impact on weight and heart health, could outweigh the risks for many people.
It's a personal decision. Each person should make it with their doctor, weighing those potential benefits against any potential risks.
Absolutely. Informed decision-making is so important. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the bigger picture. We can't ignore the fact that semaglutide's success is making waves in the pharmaceutical industry.
You're right. It's not just about the science, it's about the business of medicine. Novo Nordisk has obviously seen a significant return on their investment in research and development. More importantly, semaglutide has sparked a wave of investment and research into GLP-1 therapies.
So this is just the beginning. We could be seeing even more innovative treatments coming out.
Absolutely. Competition is good. It breeds innovation. Other pharmaceutical companies are developing their own GLP-1 receptor agonists. Eli Lilly, for example, has tirzepatide. It's showing really promising results.
That's encouraging. And it's not just about new medications. This success is also prompting researchers to explore different ways to deliver them. Like I've heard about oral formulations, which would be even more accessible. Now, this is an important point. Access to affordable, effective treatment is so important.
I completely agree. But along with all these exciting advancements, we also have to acknowledge the potential hurdles.
There's always a catch, right? What kind of challenges?
Well, the demand for semaglutide has led to supply chain issues. It's been difficult for some to access it.
That's a concern, especially with so many people who could benefit from this. What else?
Cost is a big one, right? It's expensive. Not everyone has insurance that covers it.
That's huge.
Yeah.
We need to ensure that these treatments are available to everyone who needs them.
I completely agree. These are complex issues, no easy solutions, but it's a conversation we need to have as a society.
You're right. Ultimately, the goal is to improve health outcomes for everyone, and that requires equitable access to innovative treatments like semaglutide.
Well said. And this leads us to another important part of this discussion, the potential societal impact of semaglutide, how it might change how we view weight and health.
This is where it gets interesting, right? It's not just the science, but how this might influence our attitudes and biases. It's a big deal, right? It feels like semaglutide could really be a catalyst, not just for how we treat obesity, but how we think about it as a society.
It is. Will it challenge the stigma, the discrimination that people living with obesity experience?
It's sad, we've come so far with mental health, but there's still so much judgment around weight. If this helps someone be healthier, that's a good thing. It shouldn't be something to be ashamed of.
Yeah, and it really underscores that obesity is not about willpower. It's complex, it's genetics, environment, and like we've been saying, biology.
Right? It's like telling someone with depression to just cheer up, or someone struggling to breathe with asthma to just, breathe easier. It's a medical condition. And often, medication is part of the solution,
It is.
along with lifestyle changes, of course.
Right. It's not one or the other.
Exactly. We don't shame people for taking insulin for diabetes. We need that same understanding for folks using medication to manage their weight.
I agree.
It's about time we change how we talk about this. Seeing obesity through the lens of health, not just how someone looks. Semaglutide might be what helps us make that shift.
It could be. But it's not magic. A healthy diet, exercise, managing stress, those are still so important.
It's about finding what works for each person. Medication is a tool, but not the only one.
And healthcare is moving in that direction toward personalized medicine. As we understand obesity and metabolic disease better, we can tailor those treatments too.
Semaglutide has opened up so many possibilities, scientifically, but what's exciting is what it could mean for society too.
It has. It's revolutionized how we approach metabolic health.
So as we wrap up this deep dive today, there's a question I keep coming back to. I think it's one our listeners should think about too.
Okay.
Could semaglutide, beyond what it does for individuals, be bigger than that? Could it push us to rethink our attitudes, what it means to be healthy, how we view weight?
It's the big question. It'll be interesting to see what its legacy is, but it's definitely a turning point.
That's a great way to put it. We'll leave everyone with that thought as we wrap up our look at semaglutide. Until next time, stay curious.